So tomorrow, on June the 5th, 2026, Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited. Yes, it's Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited. The listed entity is holding its 20th AGM. It's a momentous occasion. When you think about it from a Ugandan perspective, Uganda first got its we commissioned our Uganda Securities Exchange in 1997. We are almost coming of age, almost 30 years. But one of the black diamonds, one of the biggest companies on the stock exchange, in this case the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, is holding its 20th AGM, which is a momentous occasion, especially for the investors who have invested in the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited for all these years, all those who joined in the last few good years. When you talk about Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, so many people ask, oh, what is that? Is that the bank? No, unfortunately, it's not the bank. The Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited is the holding company. It has 5 subsidiaries in it, right? It has the Stanbic Bank Uganda Limited, which we know, the licensed bank by Bank of Uganda, the biggest bank in Uganda. We're going to look at the performance of Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, but majority of the time when we talk about Stanbic Uganda Holdings, the reflector is so much on Stanbic Bank Uganda. Then it has Stanbic Business Incubator Limited, its subsidiary that focuses so much on the business incubation, software development, and business incubation. It has the FlyHub Uganda Limited, which is so much for the one of the other subsidiaries. Then it has one of my favorites, which is SBG Securities Uganda Limited. SBG Securities Uganda Limited, with at the helm of SBG Uganda Limited is Grace Semakula. Then it also has Stanbic Properties Limited, which manages its properties and offers consultancies within the real estate sector. But our focus in my analysis of the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited is going to be so much on the Stanbic Bank Uganda, because it's holding its 20th AGM. Almost 20 years since it first listed on the Uganda Securities Exchange. It's important to look back at how it has been performing for the last 20 years. And I know past performance doesn't guarantee the future performance, but understanding the history gives you perspective, especially for the new investors. Whether you are an investor who has just invested in Stanbic Holdings Uganda Limited, you have just bought the shares, or you are an old investor, and how has it been performing, and what is the view for the future, right? But before I go into that, I want to give a little bit of an analysis on the SBG Securities. Ever since SBG Securities launched its unit trust, that was in mid-2024, July there, 2024. It has grown from number 6, I think it was number 6, number 7, to almost top 3 in a space of 2.5 years. That shows you the power of what the team, the investment team at SBG Securities are doing. And at that pace, I see them realistically competing for number 2 and potentially number 1 with Old Mutual in a distant future. And they have the energy, they have the power, they have the numbers to keep pushing for that. But coming back to the listed entity, the Stanbic Uganda Holdings, how has it been performing? How has been the bank been performing? When I was making some research, I was looking at the bank, and it has an efficiency ratio of 47.1% in 2025. It's making almost the loan growth is almost 20%, deposit growth almost 10%. Asset turnover, return on equity is almost 26%. The numbers in 2025 are incredible. There is no doubt about this. That's why actually it makes one of its biggest whatever. And even when you read the report that was issued by Francis Karuhanga, the chief executive of Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, or if you read the new chief executive of Stanbic Bank Uganda, Mumba Kalifua, you see the vision that they are building onto. You're the foundation of Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited. So for the last 20 years, how has it been performing? Let's go into the details, because I know that's what would interest someone to see. I don't know. Let me start with the price, because the price of the shares, I know that's always the easier one for people to say, how should I buy? Should I not buy? Right now, when we look at the price of Stanbic Uganda, right? If we are to put right now the price of Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, as of yesterday, right? As of yesterday or this week, we are looking at the total price of Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, 74 per share. 74 per share. It has not always been like that. No. It has not always been like that. When you take a step back, if we are to go back 20 years ago in 2007, they closed 2007 at 22 a share. Then in 2008, they came to 13 shillings a share. 2009, 16 a share. They started rebounding back. By 2010, they were at 26 a share. If I come forward to 2020, at the end of COVID, they were at 23 shillings a share. 2023, 32 shillings a share. 2024, at the end of 2024, they are at 39 a share. 39. So between 2024, December 31st, to June 2nd, 2026, how many months are those? 18 months? They have almost doubled the price. The price of Stanbic Uganda Holdings, the listed entity, has almost doubled. The value of the entity, the holding entity, the listed entity, has almost doubled. Almost doubled. So when you think about it just from that angle, because it's imperative to understand and appreciate that, right? That in December 2025, how has it been performing? Where is the share at? We are at 74 a share. When you take a back at the total valuation of the company, because also that gives you perspective, not just the price per share, but the total value of the company. But before I even go into that, let me start actually with that. The total value of the company in 2007, almost 20 years ago, it was 1 trillion. It has been a big bank. It's the biggest bank in Uganda. The value of the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited is mostly anchored in Stanbic Bank Uganda. And Stanbic Bank Uganda has been the biggest bank in Uganda for almost time immemorial. So, in 2007, Stanbic Holdings, the listed entity, was worth 1 trillion. In 2008, they had a dip, and 2009, they came to 840 billion. By 2010, they had recovered to 1.3 trillion. By 2015, they were at 1.6 trillion. By 2018, they were at 1.6 trillion. So between 2015 to 2018, the total value of the company, market capitalization, was the same. By 2020, the value came down to 1.3 trillion. 2020 was a hard year from an investment perspective. By 2024, they are at 2 trillion. They were at 2 trillion as the total value of the company. And how are we getting the total value of the company? Is the price per share times the number of shares that are issued. Where we are right now, as by the time they will hold their annual general meeting tomorrow, the total value of the company is in excess of 3.8 trillion. The third biggest listed entity in Uganda and the biggest in a financial services industry. 3.8. That means even if someone invested money in Stanbic Holdings Uganda in 2023-2024, by now they would have doubled their value. They would have invested in that bank. That's the power of the stock market. Now, when we talk about the stock market and the shares and equities, it always comes down to, yes, there is the risk of the price going down. But when you pick the right companies, when you pick the black diamonds and you analyze them at intricate detail, you will make the money. So to pay attention, not so much onto the Stanbic Holdings Uganda Limited to see, because like I said, the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited is their biggest subsidiary is the Stanbic Bank Uganda. You want to see how has been Stanbic Bank Uganda been performing, to give you an understanding of how is the listed entity performing, and for you to make even the decision, right? And it's important to pay attention to it. Total deposits. Even if you pay attention to the last 5 years, Stanbic Bank Uganda has grown its total deposits from 5.7 trillion in 2021 to almost 8 trillion, to more than 8 trillion by the end of 2025. That is an 8.7 cumulative annual growth rate, 8% and above. Customers' loans and advances, they have grown from 3.7 trillion to over 5 trillion. Over 8% cumulative annual growth rate. Right? When you talk about their total assets, it's the biggest bank by asset base. Stanbic Bank Uganda, it's the biggest in total assets. The second is a second distant, which is a Centenary Bank. But the total assets of Stanbic Bank Uganda have grown from 8.7 trillion in 2021 to almost 11.5 trillion by the end of 2025. What is it by now? Where by end of June we shall know by the half year results when they come out. That means the total assets are growing at a cumulative annual growth rate of 7.2%. But let's pay attention to profitability of the company. That brings us to that point which you talked about, the efficiency of the company. Their total profitability has grown from 269 billion to almost 591. Oh my goodness. 269, they have almost, actually they doubled. In 5 years, they have doubled their profit after tax. Their cumulative annual growth rate of their profit after tax is 21%. This is a cash cow machine. This is a profitability machine. And it is not slowing down. It has no competition. Stanbic Bank Uganda has no competition. When you think about also what SBG Securities is doing in the investment side of it, it's almost also challenging the top number one person in that sector. So when they have Stanbic Bank Uganda growing at this rate and SBG Securities also growing at the rate which we believe it can grow at, they have no competition. Zero. Talk about dividends, because that's what interests people. Talk about dividends. I buy shares to get, especially such companies which are cash flow positives. They have to pay dividends. They pay dividends almost every single year. For the last 5 years, if I'm to just talk about the last 5 years alone, in 2021, they paid around 50 billion in dividends. By 2025 alone, they have declared a total of 360 billion in dividends. If you take a step back and be like, in 2021, they only paid 50 billion. In 2025 financial year, a total of 360 billion is what's going to be paid out to the shareholders. If you are not invested in the stock market, which other investments are paying you such a lump sum, such a good dividend? But that only focuses on the last 5 years. It has not been like that. No, not at all. When you look at the dividend yield over the years, right? If we go back to 2007, they paid a dividend. The dividend yield at the time was 29.6%. 29.6%. In 2008, they didn't pay dividend. In 2009, 2010, 2011, and up to 2015, there. Actually, up to 2018, it was a single digit dividend yield. The best was in 2020, where it increased to 9.4. In 2022, in 2023, they increased the dividend they were paying out, and the dividend yield increased to 18.9. In 2024, at 14.7%, and in 2025, it's estimated to come out at a close to 10%. It's still a double digit. Every time you are investing in a company whose dividend yield is in double digit, it means you are in money, right? It means you are in money. When you think about it, okay, well, let's look at it this way. When you pay attention that they are paying around 360 billion in 2025, that's what they're paying to all the shareholders. But then what matters to you is the return on your investment that you as a person has made. So the dividend yield becomes important. So like, for example, in 2025, the total dividend yield is coming to close to 10%. That means you get the annual dividend they are declaring per share divided by the price per share, right? And the price per share as at end of 2025 was around 46, 48. So you get the total dividend per share they are paying divided by the price per share to get to the annual dividend. The annual dividend yield that is important for someone to make a decision when they are making investing in that company. So when you think also the return on equity, because that's the dividend, that's what they pay you as a shareholder, but they make more money, and sometimes that some of that money is retained within the company to make sure it can be reinvested for it to make you more money. So whereas the dividend yield is important because that's what comes into your wallet as a dividend return, the return on equity, on common equity, is extremely important because that tells you your total value, how much is it growing, how much is the return on the total equity. And if I'm to go back to 2007 when it started, for the first 5 years, Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited was averaging almost 40% return on equity. In 2008, it was 53%. 2009, 57%. 2010, 38%. If I come back to the recent years, the last 5 years, in 2021, it was 19.4%. 2022, 21.6%. 2023, 22.5%. 2024, 24.3%. 2025, 26.8%. That means your total value into the your total equity is the return on equity is that good. It's in the double digits, it's in the 20s. And it's not slowing down. This is a company that is growing every single day. Every single day. So you ask yourself, where do you want to be? You want to be in this company. But also because we're talking about the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, it gives you perspective of the Stanbic Bank Uganda. And I have the data. I always pay attention. I know many people pay attention to the loans and advances, but I pay attention to the total assets. The total assets is what tells me how the company is doing, right? When you take back in 2007, my Jesus Christ, the total assets of the company was just 1.3 trillion. By 2010, the total assets had grown to 2.4 trillion Uganda shillings. By 2013, 3.2 trillion. By 2016, 4.58 trillion. By 2020, they crossed 8.5 trillion. Every single year, growing in double digits. By 2024, 10 trillion. They crossed the 10 trillion, the first bank to cross the 10 trillion in 2024. By the end of 2025, the results which we have, they are sitting at the total assets of 11.5 trillion. Incredible numbers. And right now they have, the banking side has one of the arguably the best chief executive in Mumba. So you know what the future is. When you look at the past performance of this company and you pay attention to what it's going, even when you pay attention to the deposits growth indicates trust in the company. It's an indication that the people trust the company, the bank, right? In 2020, they were at 6.2 trillion. Right now, they're at 8.1 trillion. Growth. In 2015, if you go back to 2016, 10 years ago, they were at 3.3 trillion. They have more than doubled that money from 3.3 trillion in 2016 to almost 8.1 in 2025. Right? Incredible numbers they are making. I'm trying to look for you more data that I can give you, that as a person, as a shareholder, if tomorrow when you go, there are questions you're going to have to ask, there are decisions you have to make, but also to appreciate what it is that they make. What makes this bank one of the best bank to buy? What makes this company, the Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited, why one of the best company to buy in 2026? That the future of it is extremely that important, right? One of the things I always want to pay attention to when I'm analyzing, especially banks, is their efficiency ratios. Efficiency ratios means what is your total operating expenses as a percentage of the operating income. How much do you spend versus the income you are making from an operating perspective? For the last 10 years, the average efficiency ratio has been 50%. Incredible. That's very good, because it means when you look at the industry average, it's around 38%. So Stanbic Uganda Holdings Limited is above that average, which is actually very, very important. Which other number should I give you? The last 20 years. As you go tomorrow for the AGM and you're paying attention to the AGM and you're celebrating, and for those who don't own Stanbic Uganda Holdings shares, what would be the reason for you not to be owning? That's the time for you to buy the one of the biggest bank. Remember, the banking industry is it's still growing. It has not yet, in Uganda, it has not reached its maturity. We have not even entered the investment banking side of it, which Stanbic Uganda Holdings has the SBG Securities coming out of its infancy. Don't be surprised in 5-10 years where SBG Securities has morphed into a pure investment banking side of it, where it's doing some big transactions. So it tells you the future of such an institution is that commendable. It's that big. So for each and every shareholder that is going tomorrow to the AGM, who is attending the AGM, congratulations for investing in Stanbic. Congratulations in investing on the Uganda Securities Exchange. I know it's always not that rosy. We do not have those very many companies, but at least Stanbic Uganda Holdings is one of the very few that you can invest in.